Hi everyone, welcome to my video on how to set up a two-stage vacuum press. So this is a system that I designed around about 10 years ago. I mean, I can't claim to be the designer of it. I'm sure there's other people in the world that use a similar system, but this is the one that I come up with, and I'll show you how to set up the bag, the base, the vacuum pumps. Because it's a two-stage system, I have a domestic vacuum cleaner hooked up to it in a large hose that evacuates the air very quickly, which is great for when you're vacuuming large curved formations. And I'll show you how the bag is sealed off once you've got your piece in there. And yeah, show the whole kit and caboodle. So stick around and let's make a vacuum press. So my vacuum press consists of a 1.38 metre wide, 1mm PVC vinyl bag. And there's the opening to it, quite simple. And then inside the bag I have a sheet of MDF. We'll show that later on. I'll pull the MDF out and show you how that is. But on top of the MDF there's another sheet of plastic, because when I veneer, my boards or substrate will sit so the veneer is actually sitting on the underside, and then it'll be pressed like that. So if I was to do that with MDF, any glue that managed to penetrate the veneer, it would stick to the MDF. So it doesn't stick to the plastic that's inside there. But this will become apparent later on. I don't know if you can see it now, but there's holes all the way through this, and they're lined up with slots that are underneath the MDF. Again, this will become apparent later on. And then I've got my vacuum pumps. So they actually vacuum from underneath the bag. And again, you'll see this later on. And then I've got the domestic vacuum cleaner, which goes in here. And then there's a tap that locks it off, which I'll show how to connect all that up as well. So let's get into the individual elements of how this vacuum bag is set up. So this is the base of my vacuum bag. So this actually sits inside the vacuum bag. It's got lots of perforated holes on top of it, which I'll get into in greater detail. And on the underside, so that's the underside there. So that's where the vacuum pump outlet is, I guess. Well, anyway, that's how the hose hooks up to the vacuum bag. It sits in here. And then I've got all these crisscross lines, which I've just done on my panel saw, but you know, you could use a router or a circular saw, whatever you want to mark them out. And then I've got the perforated holes that line up with these. So all of these lines all join up to this one spot here, where the vacuum is drawn through. And on the top here, I've got this sheet of plastic. So this is 1mm thick plastic, because when I press veneers on this, the veneers are actually face down. So obviously I couldn't do it with the MDF, because I'd stick to the MDF with glue seeping through the veneers. So that's why I have this on here, and I have to perforate this with holes, which I use a hole punch to get the holes in this sheet to line up with the perforated holes in the MDF. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. So if you don't have one of these hole punches, well, actually I don't know what you're doing, but they should make life easier. So there's different size holes you can punch with it. and they leave a nice clean hole. Otherwise you probably have to cut around them with a knife or something, but this makes the job really fast. And of course, make sure you got all the little pieces of plastic out, otherwise they'll leave an indent in your veneers or whatever it is that you're pressing. So now that all the holes have been cut in the protective sheet, now I'm going to, the sheet is held down in each corner by a screw and washer, but to stop it from moving around properly I'm just going to put a few staples around the edge. So my vacuum press is a two-stage setup. If you really want to make this easy, just do a single stage. But I do quite large and bulky vacuuming, and if you just leave it up to the vacuum pumps, it takes quite a while. Sometimes it can take up to 15 minutes to vacate all the air from the bag. And that's no good if you're doing glue-ups like I do sometimes with yellow glue, which has got a very short open time. So I have a domestic vacuum cleaner that's also hooked up to my bag, and that evacuates the majority of the air very, very quickly. But the only way you can do that is you've got to have an inlet to the vacuum cleaner that's pretty much the same size or a little bit smaller than the hose on the vacuum cleaner. So that's what this is here. So this sits in the vacuum bag itself. So that's the inlet to the domestic vacuum cleaner, and that's about a 1-inch inside diameter. So that's large enough for the vacuum cleaner to work. And then that goes through here, and I've got this channel here that runs the length of this piece. So this sits at the end of my vacuum bag, this here. And then you'll see these holes here line up with these holes. So this way is when I initially run the vacuum bag, I'll turn on the domestic vacuum cleaner. So that draws in the air through this outlet here and through these ports here, and really gets rid of the air in the vacuum bag very quickly. But as I said, if you don't want to go to all this stuffing around, then just do a single stage vacuum bag and it's going to be a whole lot easier. So this is my vacuum table. I purposely built this around about 10 years ago, or a little bit longer than that. there's nothing special in the construction, just make it nice and strong. So I've got the 100 by 100 millimetre legs on it, and I made it high. The reason I made it high was so I could store things underneath it, and I store about 20 vacuum press jigs underneath it. So, because it takes up a fair amount of space in my workshop, so if I can utilise the area underneath it, that's good. Normally I run a pair of old Australian made Dynavac pumps, but they're hard to come by. So the setup I'm going to show today, this is what I'm going to be setting up with, is this little vacuum pump that I bought from eBay. It's nothing fancy. I bought this in 2008. It cost me $200 then, and it still works. I run it up probably about once every couple of months. I'll do a vacuum press with it just to keep it going. It's good to have it in reserve if in case something happens with my other vacuum pumps. So that's the reason I'm going to use this today, is because these are easy for people to get. There's hundreds of them on eBay, and they're probably about the same price as I paid for them 10 years ago. So also the way I set mine up, the air is drawn down through the underside of the table, which is through the MDF, an MDF sheet, which I'll show you later on. And that's what this hole here is for. So I'll bring the camera in, I'll show that in greater detail. So this is where the hose goes through from the vacuum bag into my vacuum pumps. So this goes into the vacuum bag, and then the bag sits on here, and then you've got this nut here that tightens on here so that the bag is compressed between this nut and this nut here. So if you want to do this setup, you don't have to make one yourself. They're called a vacuum pump rose or something like that, and it's like a shower rose, and that just hooks onto your vacuum pump hose, and it's just got lots of holes perforated in it, and that sits inside the bag. So you can purchase them from any vacuum supply place, or you can just do what I did and just make one yourself. So this is the underside of the table. Again, nothing fancy. It's just a couple of large rails with cross beams. And that's where the vacuum line goes through there. There's the vacuum hose there, comes through the rails, out through the last rail, and then into a T-junction. So this part of the T goes to the vacuum pumps, and this one goes to a vacuum gauge. It's very important to know how much vacuum you got. And there's the vacuum pumps. Like I said, they're old Australian made Dynavacs, which I bought from a auction years ago, and they still run really good. They're probably about 30 years old, these things, maybe even older. So now what we have to do is perforate the holes in the new vacuum bag. One for the rose that's going to be going through the bottom, and then the other for the commercial vacuum pump to hook up to. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll talk a bit about the vacuum bag. So I get these from a truck tarpaulin company here in Sydney, and they're a 1mm clear PVC bag. So how they're made, the PVC comes in a width of 1370 millimetres wide, and basically as long as you want. And you order the bags in the length that you want. This is a 3 metre long bag, and how this is made, it's a 6 metre long piece of 1 millimetre clear PVC. It's folded over, and then it's got a 1 inch or 25 millimetre weld along each side of it to totally seal the bag. And I've heard that commercial vacuum bags are quite expensive. This one cost me $270. I only got it the other day. So yeah, any tarpaulin company should be able to make these up for you. It's just a matter of asking them to make one. They won't know what a vacuum bag is if you ask them to make that. It's just at this place where I get mine from, they've made dozens of them up. So, but yeah, just ask them to fold it over, weld the edges on both sides, and you get yourself a vacuum bag. So now I'm going to put the hole in the bottom of the bag for the vacuum line. And obviously only go through the bottom of the bag, don't go through the top. So there's our hole for the exhaust port on the turbo vacuum pumps. So if you just want to make a single stage vacuum bag, that's all you'd have to do, that's any hole you'd have to put in. But because I'm making a 2-stage, now I've got to cut this hole out here for the domestic vacuum cleaner hose. So now I'll change to the largest hole on my hole punch set. So these are used for making gaskets, in case you're wondering. If you want to buy one of these, they're just a gasket hole punch set. Easy. So that's the 2 holes put in the vacuum bag. Now we'll go on to the rest of the construction. So now I've got to feed this through the vacuum bag and pass this port here through the hole that I've just punched. So that's what I'll be doing now. Okay, so that port's now sitting through the hole in the bag where it's supposed to be. So now I'm going to feed the vacuum hose through the bottom of the vacuum bag. I've made up 2 rubber gaskets. These are just out of inner tube. So they'll go on either side of the vacuum bag to seal it. So let's do that. So I'll go into greater detail on the configuration of the rows. So there's the threaded rod and the nylon hose. So I'll first fit the lower nut, then the first rubber washer, and then the vacuum bag, a second rubber washer, and then the upper nut that has the slots cut into it. So that's the rows put in now. Now it's time to put the MDF sheet in that's got the perforations and the plastic cover on it. And I've got to get it so that it sits properly over the rows. That was a bit tricky, but it's in there. So if you're doing just a single stage vacuum bag, you'd be right to go. But now we'll set up the first stage. So because this is a two-stage, I've set up the second stage. Now we'll set up the first stage. So because the only thing that's really going to be sealing, well, there's nothing really going to be sealing this. So that's where you need Celastic. I use the Sally's All Clear. It's the most expensive one you can get, but considering the bag costs $270, then another $12 for a tube of Celastic is bugger all. And that's put around here, and it's put around liberally, so that there's no way. So it's going to be probably about 1 centimetre thick. The only problem with this is it's going to take quite a few days to for the sealant inside to really cure. So you don't want to use your vacuum bag for quite a few days after this. I'm planning on not doing any vacuum pressing for probably at least 4 days. So this is a ball valve. So I'm not sure if I said that earlier on, it's just easy to open and shut. And once it's shut here, it seems to hold its vacuum perfectly. So it's a good Probably pays to get a good quality ball valve. And then I just make a nice bead or fillet of elastic around the base of it. Because this is going to have to withstand the full vacuum of the bag, this connection here. So to get your domestic cleaner to fit to the other side, you're just going to have to play around with various connections. Now this doesn't have to be super airtight because it's closed off eventually. And here's my domestic vacuum cleaner hose. There we go, that's set. So the way I seal my vacuum bag, once I've placed something in there, is a bit different, I guess. When I first started using these, we were taught at furniture school to use 2 pieces of conduit. So you'd have a 25mm piece of conduit, and that was slit open, and you'd put a 20mm piece of conduit in there, and you'd close the bag off like that. I just found that way too cumbersome. One time during a frantic glue up, it broke on me, so I was panicking, and I never want to go through that again. So I just thought there had to be a better way of doing it, and this is what I've come up with. So I've got this that just comes down, it's just a block of wood, it's hinged on the end here, and then I just put a G-clamp on the end. But I ordered my bag long enough so I could double fold it. And then that's clamped down like that. So that gives a really, really good seal, double folding the bag. So, yeah, that's my new vacuum bag set up. I mean, they're not all that technically hard to make, but you can do a lot of work with them. Mine gets used constantly. For the last couple of projects I've been doing, it's been running 24 hours a day for a couple of weeks. And I did have a puncture in my previous bag, and I didn't have time to try and repair it. Well, I tried to repair it, but it just kept getting bigger and bigger to the stage where I could put nearly half my hand through it. So that's why I had to get a new bag. But this is my 3rd bag in 11 years, and if I didn't have the puncture in the last bag, well, it still would have lasted me for many years to come. But yeah, I try to round off all the corners when I go to vacuum something, and sometimes I forget and somehow you get a puncture in there. Or I could have dropped the tool on there, I don't know. Something happened anyway. So, yeah, highly recommend, if you're on a bit of a budget, to set up a vacuum press like this. And when this cures, I'll do a test using the little vacuum pump that I bought on eBay, and we'll see how it goes. So until then, we'll let the elastic cure. Well, it's now been 3 days since I applied the elastic to the domestic vacuum cleaner port, So now we're going to run up the vacuum press and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to put in a large former. It's actually one of the formers that I made on one of my previous YouTube videos, and I'll show the difference. I'll just put the vacuum pump on first, and then we'll turn on the domestic vacuum cleaner, and you'll see the reason why I made a two-stage vacuum press. So to assist me putting in the formers, I've just got these two pieces of MDF. They just open up the bag for me, just make life a whole lot easier. So I'm going to put the former in. Then we'll seal it up with my little gate. So I double fold it. And put the G-clamp on. So you can see how fast that was. Trying to stuff around with those two pieces of electrical conduit is a bit of a joke if you ask me, but yeah, I think that's a way better way of doing it. As I said earlier, I'm just going to use the little eBay pump, because that's what most people will be able to purchase, no worries. So that's just hooked up. I use Nito or Nitto fittings. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but that's what I use anyway. Quick connections. So I'll turn on the vacuum pump first, and you'll see that not a lot will happen. And then I'll turn on the domestic vacuum cleaner, and it'll make a hell of a difference. So that's just the little pump going. If I was running my two Dynavacs, it would be faster, but still not fast enough if you're using yellow glue with a very short open time. And you can see, I mean, the bag is going down, but it's going to take a long time. So now I'll hook up now I'll turn on the domestic vacuum cleaner. There you go. So now the vacuum pump will take the rest of it down, and this little pump should get down to around about 26, 27 inches of mercury, which is plenty good enough. You know, you can vacuum press all day long on that. My two Dynavacs, they take it down to 29.5 inches of mercury, but they're pretty heavy duty beasts. So, yeah, you can see why you can vacuum press laminations with yellow glue on this, because of the amount of just how quick it is to form the shape. There's the vacuum gauge. So it's slowly getting down. So the little eBay pump is happily purring away, and what I'll do now is I'll turn the pump off and just show how good this bag can hold its vacuum. So there's the vacuum bag with the pump off, which I switched off about a minute ago, and we'll zoom in on the vacuum gauge. So that's still holding 27 inches of mercury, even though the pump's not operating. That's how well this system seals up. So there you go, that's our vacuum bag made up. All up, the bag costs $270. If you buy the little eBay pump, that's about $200. And hosing, the nylon hosing, I mean that's, I don't know, $10 or $20 or something like that. But then you need the rows. But if you can make up your own rows, like I did, well that doesn't cost you anything. But if you have to buy them, I think they're about $150. And you got yourself a vacuum press. So I highly recommend, if you're doing bulky forms like I am, to do a two-stage vacuum press. But otherwise, still go ahead and make it the same way I have, but just keep it a single stage and make life a lot easier for yourself. And you can go ahead and vacuum whatever the hell you want. So vacuum gauge is still sitting on 27 inches of mercury. I'll open up the gate, let all the air in it again. But for a shop-made system, yeah, I think it's pretty good. I'm very happy with it. I've been using it now for 11 years and it's served me well. So, like all my videos, hopefully people out there can get something from this and make their own vacuum presses, and we'll see you next time.